Well, my name is Randy Fox. I'm on the board of directors of WXNA LPFM, and I'm also the programming director for the station. So,
And you're about to say how you got started.
yeah, for many Nashville had never had an independent freeform station. I mean, we had NPR, and we had the Vanderbilt University College station, and I think part of the reason that Nashville never had an independent freeform station was because that many years ago Vanderbilt kind of evolved into kind of a quasi college station, part community station. They would allow volunteers from the community, because we especially people that knew a lot about music, to do shows on the station. So it was kind of half and half. The problem was the reason the way it became half and half was because the student staff liked it that way. The university had never actually said, "Oh, this is going to be," really signed off on that idea. So what happened was that in 2009, the university finally decided, no, they didn't want any non-student DJs on the station. And shortly after that, it turned out that part of that was a preparation because they were looking at selling the license to the local NPR affiliate, which I understand has happened to a lot of college stations across the country. So WRVU went off the air in 2011, and before that, most of us who were not students there had already lost our shows or left the station. Well, whenever it went off, and there was a movement started by both students at Vanderbilt and by alumni to try to prevent the sale, but of course that didn't come together. So what happened is that we decided to, basically, well, okay, now's the time to do something independent. It's not part of a university where it's listener-supported, independent radio, and no one could come in and take it away from us as long as we continue, to make the money to stay on the air. And so there were a group of us that got together, started meetings. We found out that the FCC there was going to be a window opening for low power license applications coming up. We got the first meeting we had was in March 2012. We got our application together, applied, and then we had about 2 years, I guess, of just kind of sitting around and waiting to hear from the FCC. We had to file some amendments or things to stay competitive for the license, but we were granted our construction permit in December 2014, and at that point, it was kind of like, okay, now what? Because we basically had got together, filled out the application, and we're waiting because there was no point in raising money or doing anything until we knew from the FCC. So then we had the scramble of 18 months to get on the air. The board, there's 7 of us on the board. Myself, Heather Lose is our president, Laura Powers is our vice president and secretary, Jonathan Grigsby is our treasurer, Pete Wilson, our music librarian, Ashley Crownover, who's kind of our de facto, station manager, because she's the one here most of the time, and Roger Blanton, who is worked with the technical stuff, and also he's kind of the station designer. He's the one that designed our logo for us.
Okay, now who can hear you? What is the radius of your listenership?
Okay, we're a low power station, so we're only 100 watts, but we have a pretty large reach here. We're all in the central area of Nashville, and if you're in the central kind of urban core in the main neighborhoods like East Nashville, Green Hills, so forth, North Nashville, we have reach into that. I couldn't tell you what the mile radius is, but I know I've heard from a few people that are actually even outside Davison County that are able to pick us up, depending on geography, like if they're up on high hills or things like that.
So you're 100 watts, fairly reasonably high up.
Right, but we're reaching the majority of the city of Nashville, which is pretty nice. It'd be nice to have more power, but that's a pretty good reach. And we've also, and of course, we're streaming online from the get-go. Like I said, we got our permit in December 2014. We had 18 months. We did a Kickstarter, raised some money. We had $50,000 goal. We exceeded that by a little over $55,000. And then we ran into some different delays. We kept hoping we'd be on the air in March or April. Turned out, though, that we ended up getting on the air on June 4th, 2016, which was exactly 18 months from the day our construction permit was issued. So we hit the deadline exactly. Although we had already applied to the FCC for an extension just in case.
And you hit the ground running.
Yes, we hit the ground running with a full program schedule. We have around 80 DJs total. We have about 120 shows. We are live on the air from pretty much 7 to midnight every day. Right now, there's a few people that slop over into those early morning hours, but for the most part, automation is running that. So we're broadcasting 24/7.
Okay. And they're all volunteers.
They're all volunteers, and it's all local programming. One thing that we decided early on is that we know a lot of other public stations, or especially startup, they'll take syndicated programming. Nashville being Music City, and with the number of musicians we have here and the number of music nerds we have here, we just made the decision we're going to be all local. So if a show is on our station, it's made by someone who is here, who lives in the Nashville or the Nashville area. And we'd love to have syndicated shows, but we want them to originate it with our station and then be syndicated elsewhere.
So what's the reaction been? It's been 3 months.
It's been amazing. I mean, we've had so much goodwill from people. I knew people would like it when we went on the air. I had faith in that idea, but it's exceeded our expectations. We've, I mean, just so many people have come to us and said, "Oh, you've made radio worth listening to again." And it's ironic because Nashville's a city. We have this massive music scene of all different types of music. It's not, of course, it's not just country music. It's country, it's folk, it's rock and roll, it's jazz. It's there's all kinds of music here, and yet all the radio we had pretty much in the city was, for the most part, was just corporate controlled stations. There's another low power radio station I should mention, Radio Free Nashville. They went on the air several years before us, but they're located out in this was whenever the FCC was only licensing low power stations in rural areas. So they're kind of out on the very edge of Davidson County. And until just recently they got a translator online, they were only able to reach kind of just the bare western side of Nashville proper. Now they have a translator, so they have a bigger range into the middle part of the city. And they have a slightly different philosophy than ours, and that's great. I'm glad that we're both on the air.
Do you have a mission statement?
Room for both. I'm the one that wrote it, but it's been so long since I wrote it, I couldn't quote it to you.
Well,
but basically, it kind of reaffirms what I said earlier about we wanted to be local programming. We wanted to keep a local focus on what's going on in Nashville, the music that's been produced here, and the music that comes here from other places, because we have so many people that live here. I mean, Nashville's the kind of place where there's a lot. You may not see the big stars out, but you'll go in a coffee shop and there's David Bowie's guitar player, they're getting coffee in the shop or all that, because Nashville has, a lot of people don't realize how big what I like to think of as the blue collar musician community is in Nashville. We have hundreds and hundreds of musicians living here who are working. I mean, but the thing is, they may not be the stars. They're the drummer or the guitar player or the bass player, and in between times they're just here living normal lives like everybody else. So that kind of gives us a unique thing. Also, getting equipment, I was joking at first that whenever we got ready to build the station, I said, if we really need equipment, we can probably just drive up and down alleys and pick it out of dumpsters, because Nashville probably has, per capita, probably more home recording studios than any other city in the world, because it's just amazing how many people oh yeah, that shed in my backyard, that's a recording studio. I mean, it's just something people just do here. They just build recording studios.
Any place you can't hear the trains.
Yeah. Well, actually, even when there are trains, I have a friend who has a studio in his backyard, and it's directly by the railroad tracks. But he knows the schedule, so he knows. Okay, we got to take a break for 10 minutes. So.
And so, what's the show you do?
I actually do 2 shows on the station. I do the Monday morning drive time show, 7 to 9 a.m., which I call Randy's Record Shop, and of course, part of that comes from the tradition. I'll briefly explain the history of that. Starting in the late 1940s, WLAC, which was a clear channel station in Nashville, the other clear channel station in Nashville besides WSM, which is the station that carried the Grand Ole Opry, WLAC was a 500,000 watt clear channel station. Beginning in the late 40s, they were one of the first major stations in the South to start programming R&B music and start programming music aimed specifically at an African American audience. And because they were a clear channel station at night, they had a reach that extended over most of the eastern United States, all the way up into Canada, all the way down into Jamaica. And there were two stores that were the primary sponsors of these R&B shows on WLAC. One was Ernie's Record Mart, which was downtown in Nashville on 3rd Avenue. The other one was called Randy's Record Shop, and that was in Gallatin, Tennessee, which is about 30 miles north of Nashville. And they sponsored these R&B programs at night, and that was, for a lot of people, that's the first place they would ever hear about R&B or the blues on the radio was on WLAC. And that had a tremendous influence not only on spreading the popularity of R&B and blues, but of course leading to the creation of rock and roll, because suddenly you have all these white kids that are turning in on their radio at night to listen to R&B. So anyway, because Randy's Record Shop was one of the shows on there, I had to name my show that, being in Nashville and so forth. And my name's Randy, so I got claim to it. The other show I do is the show actually that I did when I was at WRVU, and it's called the Hit Billy Jamboree. I do that with my friend Kels Cook, and it's a program of classic country music, western swing, rockabilly. We kind of tend to go for the more deep catalog stuff, the more up-tempo stuff that people aren't familiar with. We always loved it when we would get phone calls from people when we were doing the show on RVU. I never had any idea that country music could be this much fun or could be this cool. You know, it's like, well, yeah, it was once upon a time. So that's the two shows that I do. I mean, all of the board members all have their own shows on the station here, and yeah, it's been a great time.
What is your call letters? What is your station ID?
Well, it's WXNA, and early on we were talking about, we were trying to come up with different ideas for call letters, and we were wanting to put a little thought into it. And I always like the idea of the X, just because saying, you know, on the X is cool. It also meant that we could use ZZ Top's "Heard It on the X" as a theme song for the station. And several years ago, I read a book on the border radio stations, which were just across the border in Mexico, which would blast out with like 1 million watts of power, or insane amounts of power, before they were finally kind of shut down. And I've always been fascinated by those border radio stations. So, and in Mexico, all radio stations start with X, so they were called X stations, which is what the ZZ Top song is about, Heard It on the X, actually. So we kind of like the idea of X. So what we did was, whenever you go to the FCC site and you're looking for call letters, you can actually put requests in there to see which letters are available. Well, we just went in and said, okay, well, what's available that has a W and an X? You know, starts with W, obviously, has to. That has an X in it, you know, that is available. And we got a list of everything. We're going down the list, and we say WXNA, NA for Nashville. And it was like, that's it. That's it.
There you go.
It was just very obvious. And plus the fact that we are all ex-WRVU DJs. We kind of like that idea too. It was just a
but I mean,
nice
what's the actual station ID that's your legal thing you have to say every hour?
Oh, well, what we have to say every hour is WXNA LP, with LP standing for low power. And that's the FCC requirement.
In Nashville.
Right.
So you have to say the
WXNA LP Nashville. Exactly.
Okay, good. So if anybody watching this wants to send these guys bumpers, wants to send them station IDs, WXNA LP Nashville.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
And we're online at WXNAFM.org. Funny story about that. When we went to get our domain name, it turned out that WXNA.org is owned by the Walnut Crossing Neighborhood Association.
Well, of course it is. Is there, I mean, it's been 3 months, and you know, however many years it's taken. Is there any story that you've always wanted to say that you've never talked about?
Oh, wow.
My hand's getting tired.
I will say one story that this was kind of fun, that was interesting to me, was that when we began our Kickstarter, and we really started trying to fundraise and talk to people, and we would start telling people what the station was going to be, we found out pretty early on that Nashville has grown so much in the last 5 years. There's so many people that have moved here that when we start trying to describe what we were trying to do, we ask people, well, do you remember WRVU, which went off the air in 2011? And a lot of people, some people would, but a lot of people are like, no, I just moved here 6 months ago, or I just moved here a year ago. But what we quickly found out is that when we mentioned other public stations, public freeforms, community stations around the country, whether they be in Seattle or New York or Denver or wherever, people then immediately knew what we were trying to do. And they would say, when I moved to Nashville, it surprised me that there was not a station like that here, because I was used to listening to KEXP in Seattle or whatever, or WRVU, or WFMU in New York, or something like that. And so we quickly found that was the way to sell ourselves, was to compare us to other great radio stations around the country, because people immediately got that idea.
And speaking of Kickstarter, that's why I'm here, because I was a Kickstarter, and as part of the reward.
And thank you.
Well, you're welcome. But as part of the reward, they said, come and be on one of our shows when we're up and running. This is like a year and a half ago when you were doing this.
Right.
And at the time in Minneapolis, I called you up and I said, well, if I contribute, can I just do this by phone? And you said, okay. But as it turned out, you were, as you said, you were supposed to be up in March. Here it is, October, September, and I could come down here and actually just be on it. How many of the Kickstarter people have come in and done shows so far?
Well, actually, you're the first one, but we have several more coming this week, because we kind of set aside this week to try to fit as many people in as we possibly could. There's a couple of people that couldn't do it this week, so we'll be picking them up later.
Cool.
But yeah, we're going to have several people on the air this week. So, but you're the first.
Great. Okay, well, good. Thank you, Randy. And we'll be on the air in about an hour and a half, which doesn't affect you while you're watching this on YouTube. But thanks, and we'll talk later. And and I look forward to hearing stuff on WXNA. Yay.